Welcome into the Illini Inquirer podcast. It's Jeremy Werner and Joey Wagner, and we continue our position preview series, getting down to the wire here. Just two more. We got DBs and special teams coming up next after this one. But today, let's focus on still the defensive front and a little bit of the second level. Both these positions can be very versatile in this defense, and some of these players, as we will talk about, can kind of go back and forth between these groups. It's the outside linebackers, which is basically the edge rushers of the Illini in this three defensive lineman scheme, but also the linebackers. Sometimes you only see one of them on the field at a time in this new style of defense in college football, really facing all of these spread offenses. So we'll break down both these groups, two important parts of this defense. A lot of returners coming back to this group. So we'll break it all down. But Joey, it was nice. We are recording this on Thursday. Wednesday, we got our best view of Illinois football's roster, their personnel. We got to watch a full practice because Big Ten Network was in town. I encourage everyone, find it on your DVR, whatever it is, YouTube TV, and go watch it. They do a great job every year of breaking down the Illini and getting great interviews with the coaches and the players. But for us, it was an opportunity to just see a little bit more of this group. And while we don't want to make grand conclusions based on a practice they weren't tackling, based on a practice where not everybody was available, it was nice to see who they deployed, where they could be, and just see them get in action a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it's what we've been wanting to see, right? It's not necessarily, I mean, you're interested in schemes, but that's just too early to start taking all that away because we roughly know how Illinois is going to play football on both sides of the ball. It's just good to see guys move. It's good to see how and where guys lined up and in what order. Stuff that's kind of basic, but it's really good to see halfway through training camp.
Yeah, so before we get into the outside linebackers and inside linebackers, just give me one thing that stood out to you about practice. We've had a whole big practice report. Go to linebacker.com, check that out. Again, if you're not a VIP member, get access to all that stuff. 50% off. It's a $60 savings. Now is a great time to sign up. But give us one thing, Joey, the listeners, one thing that really stood out to you.
Yeah, we've talked about wide receiver a lot. I still want to know who kind of, like, we keep saying who's going to step up, who's going to step up. I think the answer is and has always been Colin Dixon, right? Like, I do think that is the note. He is a no doubt guy who is going to get fed a lot from Luke Altmaier. He's versatile. He can go in the slot. He can go outside. You still want to know, is it going to be Malik Elzy? Is it going to be Justin Bowick? Is it going to be Alexander Kapka-Jones, who we saw a little bit more of than we thought with Malik Elzy out yesterday? But we are probably overlooking the two obvious ones, and the most obvious is Colin Dixon and then Hank Beatty. Like, it's such a big question, but those guys have been kind of sitting in front of us all along.
Yeah, when it comes to production, I have no doubt those guys are going to get a lot of production. And maybe we haven't talked enough about Hank Beatty. I think is a guy that's going to get fed a lot. I thought Hudson Clement looked pretty good in practice, looked a little more comfortable. Malik Elzy was not out there. He's nursing a hamstring injury. Sounds like if a game was yesterday, he would have been out there. But they're just going to be precautionary with him. So Alexander Kapka-Jones got a lot of his reps, and he looked pretty good. I thought Ashton Hollins made some plays yesterday. But I think it's clearly the way I'm getting and the way these guys are talking. Like Barry Illini has kind of said, guys have had their good days, guys have had their not so good days. Luke Altmaier said on BTN last night, still kind of seeing who emerges as the go-to guy. I don't know if there's going to be that go-to guy. I do think this could be really more spread out. I think Dixon and Beatty, no doubt, are going to be a big part of it. I think Clement is going to produce because he's done it. I think he, as the season goes along, I think he can get more and more comfortable. But the big X factor is, do you have that guy who can go up and win contested catches? That element that Pat Bryant clearly had. Like, I think they got the guys to replace Zachary Franklin in the aggregate there with Colin Dixon and Hudson Clement can play that role. Hank Beatty can get fed more. But having that playmaker, I think Malik Elzy has to be that guy, or Justin Bowick has to step up. But Alexander Kapka-Jones should not be overlooked. Might not be as physically gifted as those other two guys, just lengthwise. I mean, he's big, but he's not as strong as those guys. I think Justin Bowick's faster, but he's just had 3 years in the system. So that position is really intriguing. I do think we shouldn't overlook the tight ends, and not just as pass catchers, because Davin Stoffel is going to play. He's going to play a big role, maybe as big as Cole Rusk. Cole Russ didn't get a ton of reps yesterday. I wonder if he's on a pitch count, but those guys are going to make an impact. And Christian Abney is going to get on the field at some point. But just having that depth and having bigger options, Joey, I don't think we should overlook how big of an impact that could have in the run game. Being able to have 12 personnel, being able to be more creative, I think adding those tight ends is going to be big. And then the other part I would bring up, Des Schuster, emerging this week, getting back on the field after 2 seasons that are kind of lost due to medical issues, a heart condition that he had. He had an enlarged heart in 2023, really could have used him then. And then 2024, played just a couple games, then had shoulder surgery in the spring. He sure looks the part, 6'5", 335, moves well, ridiculously long arms. Him emerging as a backup tackle option has given me a little bit of comfort because he actually looked really serviceable yesterday. So to have another option behind Melvin Priestley and to be able to, if JC Davis did have an injury again or is out, you can move Melvin Priestley to left tackle. That gives me a little more comfort because I didn't know what they had at tackle with Aiden Kanapik out the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, he's been kind of a revelation of the last couple of days, which has coincided with him being on the practice field the last couple of days. Guys had medical issues in his career that have really limited him from being out there, but we liked him as a JUCO addition 2 years ago now. It's just been a rough patch to get there. He's got long arms, got that guard tackle versatility. I think that's been such an encouraging sign when a lot of the conversation about the offensive line has been, hey, another guy's out for a day or two. Another guy's out for a week. To hear and to see Des Schuster step in as someone who can be in that top 8, top 9, I think would be fair to put him at, has been good to see. Can we manifest 13 personnel the way Brett Bielema talks about this tight end room? Can we manifest some looks that way?
Yeah, I think you'll see it. You get some barge packages out there with a bunch of big bodies. I feel like we don't talk. I'm getting bullish on this run game. I really am because of the offensive line, because you have tight ends. I think they're going to run the ball better. 2 other things I want to note. We're going to dive into the outside linebackers. Linebackers, of course, we'll do DBs later. But so we'll hit on some of the things we saw there. But there's been a couple guys I'm really stock up on and just all in on. Melvin Priestley being one of them. Just been dominant since the spring. James Thompson Jr. is really good. The Wisconsin defensive line. We knew that, Joey, but just every time we see him, he's in the backfield. So he's really good. The other part, Carter Hewitt, you made a great call in our last podcast. I talked about the 4-eye. You said James Thompson brought up that Carter Hewitt was playing a little bit of nose. He was. And I think he and Angelo McComb are battling for reps behind Kurt Neal. So it was a good call from you that he's kind of in that mix. Don't overlook Pat Farrell, Jeremiah Warren. They're both playing at that 4-eye position. So just to clear up where those guys are kind of playing, Pat Farrell, Jeremiah Warren are going to be big parts of that 4-eye rotation.
Yeah, and also along the lines of defense, we have been bullish about sub packages and multiplicity on the defense. I still feel really good about that they are going to expand on what we saw out of them in those final 4 games last season. I think that you're going to see them really move and match pieces around to maximize everyone on this roster. And that might mean lower snap counts for some guys and maybe you would expect, but I think especially at edge and linebacker, which is really what we're talking about with sub packages, just because there's such a vast skill set between guys in those 2 positions. I think they're going to be pretty multiple, and I think you're going to see some different looks from down to down out of those 2 groups in particular.
That's where, and we'll dive into it with these guys. It's hard. I was putting together a depth chart, Joey, and I don't want to put a guy 3rd string on the depth chart when I feel like he's a starter in a sub package, right? So like, that's where like somebody's going to look at a depth chart and be like, well, that guy, why is he lower than I thought he was? It's like, well, he's going to play. They just have different rotations. Just because he's not a starter doesn't mean he's not going to play. Like the backup outside linebacker we're going to talk about can get 300 to 400 snaps. Linebackers, only Rosiek got more than 350 snaps last year out of the linebackers. So they're going to rotate these guys. Jaheim Clark, Torrey Cox, Caleb Patterson, they're all going to play starters level reps. But that's the nice thing about accruing this depth, Joey, is especially on that defensive side and even at wide receiver, tight end, and running back, you can start rotating those guys. Like Gabe Jacas is going to play a ton of snaps. Xavier Scott, Miles Scott, Matthew Bailey. I don't know how much those guys are going to come off the field. Of course, the offensive line and Luke Altmaier that way too. But like those other guys, like you want a true rotation, and that's what the great programs have. And that's what I'm really encouraged about, especially on defense, is depth.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's something that we've talked about a lot, and I think it just hasn't been to this level. And that's kind of the blessing in disguise of Dylan Rosiek in particular going down last year, as you saw Malachi Hood do things on the football field that had been largely ideas for several years. You saw Kenenna Odeluga get back to looking like Kenenna Odeluga again. You saw James Kreutz get meaningful reps out there. So all those things, like it might, you might gloss past it, right? At the final stretch of a season where it's like, oh, that's fun. So-and-so is in. But that builds that depth, and retention has kept that depth, right? So they've got it at some positions, not every position, but on the defense, you do see it really emerging at most spots, I think. And I just want to know how they unleash that and how they move that around and repackage that in sub packages.
All right, let's dive into the outside linebackers. This position has been a strength of the program ever since Brett Bielema has come here and gotten the most out of guys like Owen Carney and Isaiah Gay, guys that we thought were pretty talented that Lovie Smith brought in. And then, guys like Seth Coleman really emerged under Brett Bielema, and then finding a guy like Gabe Jacas. It was still a position of strength last year, mostly because Gabe Jacas became the full-blown star that we thought, Joey. 13 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, a stat we should probably not overlook, 3 forced fumbles. Also 74 tackles. He was active everywhere, didn't come off the field that much, just blew up into a complete star. After a sophomore year, that was fine. Like he was a solid starter, but just wasn't maybe didn't take that step we thought after being such a great freshman. I will say Seth Coleman's last year, a little underwhelming, 53 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 3 sacks. Did have 30 quarterback pressures, but just didn't finish as many plays as I think they would have hoped. Alec Bryan, I thought, was really solid in the rotation, 22 tackles, 2 sacks, both of those against Nebraska. I don't know if you still have the sign, Joey, but Joe Barna stepped up, especially early in the season, 16 tackles, tackle and a half for loss. There you go. 1.5 sacks. Then you had guys like JoJo Hayden, Daniel Brown make an impact late in the season. This was still pretty good. This was a pretty good position group. They were more productive than they were the year before, Joey. 108 pressures out of them, 14.5 sacks. Those were best under Brett Bielema. So this was a position of strength, and it was mostly because of Gabe Jacas.
Yeah, he took the star turn we thought he was going to take at some point after that freshman year. I think we thought maybe you'd see a little bit more of it his sophomore year, but junior year was everything you thought it was going to be. 44 quarterback pressures. You can go down the line with him. I was just looking earlier today what he did to the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
Was like just absurd. And even like you want to talk just in particular.
He became a game wrecker last season, right? I mean, there were a couple games, kind of like Xavier Scott was against Kansas. Gabe was massive and changed games last year.
Yeah, Michigan in particular comes to mind. He had 7 pressures against Michigan. I went back last season. That is not a number of pressures that a lot of players have had against a Michigan offensive line in quite some time. I'd have to really look back into that stat and see what it was, but that's an absurd amount. And then you have 10 against Michigan State. I mean, he took over in Johnny Newton-like ways, right, from that defensive front. And we wondered who was going to replace Johnny Newton, different position, but that productivity came from Gabe Jacas.
And it had to be. It had to be Gabe Jacas. The interesting part about this position group, it's the one where you made a coaching change. Clint Sinton moves on after just 1 year for whatever reason. Didn't work. Clint Sinton moves on to Colorado State. It was a productive group, but we learned this during the bowl game. During the last couple games, Trent Harris and Alex Panos took over that group, and they were hired to basically both take over this room. Trent Harris is the outside linebackers coach, and Panos as the co-linebackers coach. So that's an interesting wrinkle to this group. We'll talk about one more staff member that could make an impact. But Brett Bielema says it often. He brought Gabe Jacas to Big Ten Media Days in 2024 because he didn't think he was going to get it back in 2025. Thank NIL. Thank revenue share. Gabe Jacas is back. He got a grade back that was pretty good from the NFL, but not top 2 rounds. So he decides to come back, and now he's getting mentioned possibly as a top 2-round guy going into this year, one of the best pass rushers in the country coming back. So the question, Joey, that I'll lead with, how can Gabe Jacas get even better?
I text you when you sent this. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what that answer is. I think, like we say this, he's on double-digit sack watch, right? Like to take those 44 pressures and find your way to 10 sacks. Those forced fumbles, you mentioned it, were enormous because they changed games, right? And I keep being disruptive. I think he played the 4th most snaps on the team last season. I don't know why you would change that. I've referenced this on here before, but do you remember when Michael Scott was trying to figure out how to propose? And like, Michael, if you're in costume, you've done something wrong. Like if Gabe Jacas isn't on the field, the top 5 amount of your defense, you've done something wrong. And when he's out there, I just want to see him put his hand on the ground and go get the quarterback. I know that, there's the element of playing out in space a little bit. The best version of Gabe Jacas is when he is bearing down on quarterbacks, putting pressure on quarterbacks, getting double teams so James Thompson, can have one-on-ones and get to the quarterback. If you want to improve, just get to that double-digit sack, I think, and really continue to be that game wrecker who can flip a game. Maybe you rip a ball out of a quarterback's hand 1 or 2 more times. But we are very much in the weeds here because he is simply one of the most disruptive players in the Big Ten.
Yeah, we're talking about improvements on the margins, right? Because he was awesome. He was unbelievable last year, leaping from 22 pressures in 2023 to 44 last season. Tackles for loss tripled from 4 to 13, and sacks doubled from 4 to 8. The interesting part, Joey, he leaned down this offseason. I mean, it doesn't maybe not to the naked eye looked like he did, but he went from 280 to 265. Why would he do that? Why would he do that? It's because he is a tweener. At the next level, Gabe Jacas is a tweener. He, I don't think, is an outside linebacker at the next level, right? I don't think he's a guy that you really want. I mean, he can stand up and rush if you want, but he's got to pick. Do you want to be a true defensive end at the next level, pass rusher, edge rusher, or do you want to bulk up and be a 3 technique? And to be honest with you, at times I think he should bulk up and be a 3 technique and be the next Johnny Newton, because I think he could be unbelievable with that. When he gets on the inside on some passing downs, Joey, he is dominant because his power plays there, yet his athleticism in a phone booth against those guards is even better than it is on the edge where he's got to cover a lot of areas. So I think burst and speed is the next step. He's got a good burst off the line of scrimmage, but it's just that speed to finish. And he relies a lot on power moves, on bull rush, I don't have the stat, Joey, but a lot of his sacks, it felt like maybe half of them, maybe I'll go back and look at this, felt like it were on stunts where he, the defensive lineman moved to the outside. He went to the inside, got matched up on a guard, which is great. That's a great job by Aaron Henry, Terrence Jameson to get him in advantageous situations. But the next level, he's got to get that pressure and get those sacks from the edge. So the leaning down really is interesting to me. He's not the longest guy, so I don't think he's that 4-5 technique at the next level. So I think it's really interesting that he decided to lean down. I thought his repertoire got better. Like, he was only a bull rush guy. I felt like his first and second years. I thought his, moves were better, his swims, his, clubs, all that. But if you read the outside views, I looked up the NFL draft takes on him. They say that's an area he needs to improve. So Brett Bielema hiring Joe Kim, and a pass rush specialist in the NFL for the last 3 decades, a guy who, coached for Bill Belichick that long, who developed unbelievable amount of pass rushers. That's a real big X factor, is what does Joe Kim help get out of Gabe Jacas? Because he has coached some of the best pass rushers in the world, working on that hand placement, working on those hand fighting techniques. So I know Brett Bielema hired Joe Kim to help his entire program. He works at the offensive line. You see him working with DBs during practice. Where does he work most, Joey? Like Alec Bryant, Leon Lowry, and Gabe Jacas go over to the sideline while special teams is going on because they ain't doing special teams. They're here to get after the quarterback. Joe Kim has 15, 20 minutes each day working with those guys. So I wonder what Joe Kim can unlock out of Gabe Jacas. And I feel like that hire was in part to get the most out of Gabe Jacas again.
100%. It's Brett Bielema has known Joe Kim for a long time. And it has just really felt like after Kevin Kane went to Purdue with Ryan Walters. It's like, who here is getting the most out of Gabe Jacas? How do we make him the most disruptive force in the Big Ten off the edge? I thought Charlie Bullen had a resume to do that.
Hell of a hire.
Yeah.
I think he was a good coach. I think Gabe was just, getting older and needed to mature, but he was a hell of a recruiter too. And he got hired by an NFL team to be their outside linebackers coach. I think that one was going right. So this is Gabe's 4th outside linebackers coach, by the way.
Yeah, I guess if you want to go bright side, is Trent Harris was in that room a year ago, so it's at least a familiar voice to Gabe Jacas. But it does, man. And I know Joe Kim is everywhere. Like, we've seen him with the offensive line, we've seen him with the DBs. This felt to me like the Gabe Jacas whisper. Make him a freak show, make him a ton of money, and wreck quarterbacks. And we'll see how that comes to be. I mean, dude, he is really good. Like, I hope people appreciate what last season was from Gabe Jacas, because if he would have jumped to the NFL, no one would have blamed him.
No.
And I just hope it would have been looked at as like, wow, he was absolutely like Newton levels of destruction.
I mean, we can go down Xavier Scott, Matthew Bailey. Gabe Jacas is the best early evaluation of Brett Bielema's tenure, right? I mean, this is an unbelievable find. I know Tennessee had offered too late in this process, but to win that recruitment against Tennessee at the time, but also to evaluate him when others didn't know him. It speaks to what Brett Bielema's connections down in Florida, the coaches he knows down there that kind of tipped him off here, and then just going out and getting him and winning a big recruitment. I didn't think Johnny Newton had a lot of reason to come back for 2023. And imagine what 2023 would have been without Johnny Newton. Like, we saw when he was off the field, how important he was to that team. There's more around Gabe than there was Johnny that year on this defense. So the fact that you have another game record like this, that's going to draw the attention and make everyone else's life easy. Like, if you have to double team Gabe Jacas, you're leaving James Thompson one-on-one. You're leaving Alec Bryant or Leon Lowry one-on-one. So he's going to make everybody better. So even if he doesn't get double-digit sacks, the attention he's going to draw, and he's going to win battles, Joey, but that is going to help everybody on this defense.
Now, I've just been thinking about, do you remember Gabe Jacas's game day official visit? And it's like, who is this guy? Like, I think I asked you, we thought maybe, like, initially you walked by, you think maybe he's a JUCO kid because he was just so physically developed. I think we probably don't talk enough about that early win over Tennessee. That came down to literally signing day and Illinois holding on to him. And that first big eval of Brett Bielema's tenure. McCray, we put McCray in there because he was productive when he was healthy. And then the first just huge recruiting win to beat Tennessee head-to-head. And it's really turned into be exactly what they had hoped, and probably in truth more, just given what last season was and what this season could be.
It feels like we don't talk enough about the best player in the team, and I think Gabe Jacas could be that this year.
I do want to bring that up because we were talking about that yesterday. It's like, okay, you're so entrenched, like, who's going to be the backup star? Who's the fourth corner? Who's the third tight end? And at some point you have to zoom out, and it's nice when we do. I know we both get calls to do like national stuff or more like Big Ten focus stuff, and then you talk about it's like, oh, we don't talk enough about Matthew Bailey, Gabe Jacas, Xavier. We do and we don't, right? Because I think people who consume our content regularly know, right? And
it's like the Bears. It's like the Bears right now. We're not talking a lot about Montez Sweat or Joe Thuney. It's like all about Caleb Williams. It's all about, who's going to win the left tackle battle. You're getting into your question marks. The great part is with Illinois, they're deep question marks, and you have stars like Gabe Jacas returning, like one of the best defensive pass rushers in the Big Ten, one of the best pass rushers. So
absolutely, yeah. It's I'm really eager to see how he follows up last season, and you're going to get a lot of attention. And as you mentioned, maybe some of that production is production for your James Thompsons, your Kurt Neals, your Tommy Wadurjais, Angela McCollums, and to our next point, Alec Ryan or Leon Lowry.
Yeah, I do love the forced fumble stat for him. I got to witness Whitney Merciless's unbelievable 2011 season where he just carried Illinois. And to watch him have 16 sacks and 9 forced fumbles, like, that's not going to happen again. But if you have a pass rusher that can get the ball out, something we overlook with Illinois, they forced 15 fumbles last year. That led the Big Ten. They need to keep doing that. And Gabe Jacas is a huge, huge part of that. All right, let's go to the next question. Outside linebackers, obviously the favorite at the Fox position. Gabe Jacas plays the buck. The Fox position is the other one, usually a twitchier guy. I asked Trent Harris. He said there's not a big difference between the two. But when you see Gabe Jacas and Joe Barna playing the buck, kind of tells you it's the big, strong, stout one. The other side is usually a little bit more of a twitchier pass rusher, but they're kind of interchangeable. So who is the favorite here? Alec Bryant, 5th year at Illinois. I kind of overlooked that because he spent a year at Virginia Tech, but he redshirted, then has now in his 4th year of playing here. Or Wisconsin transfer Leon Lowry Jr., Joey. I'll let you go because I think you've been nailing this one the entire time while I haven't.
Yeah, I think it's Alec Bryant. I believe in being in a system, even though we just talked about how many different position coaches he's had, the system remains in a lot of ways. I think he's reliable. I think he's a guy who can give you maybe not the pass rush value that you would think of from that twitchier guy, but I think he can hold up fairly well against the run. I think there's a lot of trust built over the years with Alec Bryant. He's kind of waited for this opportunity to make this kind of impact. I don't know how great I feel about leaning Bryant over Lowry because we've only seen so minimal of training camp. I just think that experience is going to play. And he's been a fine Big Ten player, right? Yeah. Like the numbers aren't gaudy. The numbers aren't Gabe-like, really even Seth Coleman-like. But I do feel like when he's gone in, he's been fine. And I think giving him some more reps, he's earned that opportunity. And we'll see. Like, is this something that maybe changes in week 4, week 5? Yeah, maybe. It could, but I think to start out, I would lean towards Bryant.
Yeah, my thing with this question, like there's a way for us to talk about these guys, but the difference is probably like 200 snaps, right? Like they're both going to play a lot. Alec Bryant last year, he played 300 and I think 50 snaps. Seth Coleman played about 550. So there's a difference between about 200 snaps, but one is going to play more, but both these guys are going to have to make an impact for Illinois. And they're probably getting a lot of one-on-one battles with Gabe Jacas getting all the attention. So my question about Alec Bryant, is he what he is? Which, as you said, I think is a solid, serviceable starter, or does he have another level to him? This is an older player. Can they get more out of him? Can Trent Harris and Alex Panos and Joe Kim get more out of him? We saw a glimpse of it in the Nebraska game, right? 2 sacks in that game, including a big one late. Not a lot of other moments out of Alec Bryant, right? I think he's really good against the run. He's really stout there. But does he have more pass rush value? He's got 26 pressures over his entire career here. And, 3 years of really playing a rotational role. That's not a lot. So does he have another level to get to there? That's what I need to see. And that's why I've always kind of thought Leon Lowry might make more sense opposite Gabe Jacas because he is twitchier. He's not as strong against the run, though. That's not his strength, but he is more of a twitchy athlete, more bend to him, and he's had more pressure production and sack production in college than Bryant. Now, he did not at Wisconsin. I do think it is telling that 3 defensive starters from Wisconsin decided to leave that scheme and go to a competitor. I think they just didn't feel like they were used very well in that Wisconsin defense, but he is a little bit different of a flavor of a guy, a little thinner, but that makes him a little twitchier. So both are going to play major roles. Here's the numbers. Coleman, 574 snaps last year. Bryant, 349. So that's my question. I think Lowry's got a little bit more upside to make the flashy plays, but Bryant, I think they can trust Joey just to make the right plays, be solid, and do his job, consistently well.
Yeah, it's a little bit of what we talked about on the defensive line is, do you want to come out and establish yourself against the run, right? Because I think, he's a sure tackler. Alec Bryant has been very good. His tackle grades on PFF were good last year. 13 pressures, you're just not changing. You're not making game-changing plays like a Gabe Jacas or like Johnny Newton did. Can you get 13 if that roll goes up? If he's in that 500 snap category, can you make that 23 to 25? Can you get a chance to get back there and be that complement? And really, you're going to be on the right side of opportunity with Gabe Jacas across from you. Or is it a combination of Leon Lowry and sub packages? I don't know. I think early on it's Bryant, rather, excuse me. And we will see. Like kind of some of that, Jeremy, I don't know if you would agree, feels to me like what does Illinois need?
That
right?
Day.
Do you need that day, right? Do you need to be strong against the run in particular that day, or do you want to go try to? You playing a younger quarterback that's susceptible behind an offensive line that you want to go try to just really get in their face and disrupt them? Because if you do, history has shown Bryant hasn't been that guy at Illinois. He's been very serviceable, but he's not been, a pressure generator per se.
For sure. All right, last one on the outside linebackers. Pretty deep group, Joey. What roles can Joe Barna and Daniel Brown, who's making some noise during this training camp after missing almost all of last year with a back injury, came back the last couple weeks, played 34 snaps, played on some sub packages. So what roles do you think Barna and Daniel Brown, a former JUCO All-American, can bring?
Well, we'll start with Barna. And the hard part is we just said, why in the world would you take Gabe Jacas off the field? And he's directly behind Jacas. So that's a challenge, right? When you're sitting behind a guy who is as productive and as good as Gabe Jacas, can they play reps together? Do you want to go jumbo size, just power the heck out of it? And that maybe that's matchup, right? Is there an opposing tackle that struggled with guys who have the power that Joe Barna has? So I don't know right now if you can say I'm going to project this kind of role for Joe Barna because Gabe Jacas is back and he should get all of those snaps. Daniel Brown is much more interesting in the sense of sub packages. That's where we really saw him emerge last season. He's not the every down guy against the run per se, but he can get after quarterbacks. He's done it in his collegiate career back in JUCO. I think he is so interesting to me, and we can talk about JoJo Hayden and Kaneto DeLuga here in a second, who would overlap in some capacity with those sub-package spots. But if he can be that pressure generator on third down, then I think there could be a pretty good role for him.
It was interesting. Trent Harris, when we talked to him last week, he said Joe Barna has stood out among guys who have impressed him. Now we'd expect Gabe Jacas and Leon Lowry and Alec Bryant to be part of those guys, but he's mentioned Joe Barna was the first name. Joe's going to get snaps because you do want to keep Gabe Jacas fresh for the fourth quarter, right? Like you want to be able to make sure at the end of games he's not worn down. Because remember, we felt like Keith Randolph and Johnny Newton at times in 22 and 23 were worn down because they didn't have depth. So when you have a guy you feel like can give you some solid rotation reps, I do think Barna's got a way to get 200 snaps. He had about 200 last year. So I do think he's going to play rotational role, maybe get a series or two every game. And I think he can give you some production there. Daniel Brown's really interesting because, boy, he flashed in those last couple games. This guy who had 18 sacks at the JUCO level, of course it's the JUCO level. He's not a full-time guy, right? He's just not long enough. He's 6'1", 250. I think he'd really struggle in the run game on the edge. But he's a guy who can kind of play off the ball linebacker. He's done it before in his life. And we saw in the bowl game, especially against Lenora Sellers, you think about, defending a guy like Darian Mensah or some of these athletic quarterbacks in the Big Ten, you're going to get Demon Williams at Washington. If you ran some more 3-3-5, Daniel Brown could be a guy who gets a lot of snaps and can give you somebody who's versatile. I don't want him dropping into coverage a ton, but he's better at it than some of these other guys that could play an outside linebacker, yet he can still give you a lot of pass rush value, especially on third downs, Joey. If he can just pin his ears back and get under and try and run around a tackle, he can do it. Plus, he's got some strength for his size. He's 250 pounds at 6'1". Like, he's pound for pound really, really strong. So he's an impressive pass rusher and just kind of an interesting X factor that in limited snaps in a sub-package role, I think could be pretty productive. And that's what's interesting about this Illinois team is they have so many of these guys.
Yeah, they've really built kind of a combination of here you're every down, like you could just physically see either every down, outside linebackers, inside linebackers. And here are these, I don't know how many snaps. I don't know what this looks like, but you are going to be effective in your sub package. So I think Brown has a lot of intrigue. I don't know if you would agree. I'm going to keep the Joe Barna sign, by the way. I don't know. We can't retire that entirely because I'm very high on Joe Barna.
Yeah, the Sign Guys podcast is coming, by the way. We were planning it out yesterday.
Does Joe Barna, and we're probably a couple days ahead of the DB talk, is there any Resetich in terms of like, I feel like you can play. Also, you are blocked by really, really good college football players right now. And that's okay when you're this young in your college career, but like
Like Resetich is a junior. Joe's a sophomore, so it's a little different. Yeah.
It's a little different. And I think Resetich has shown more over the course of his career, obviously. But I just kind of have similar feelings. Like if Akis didn't come back, we would be I think would be very Barna heavy on this pod. And I do think there's a role. It's just, I don't want Gabe Jacas off the field. So I want to know if they can mix them together out there. Because I'm really, really interested if you can play those two together. Because that's a lot of strength.
Boy, and it's a great guy to learn from for the next,
I talked to Joe Barna about that. Yeah. He's like, I said he kind of flies in the face of like, because he's like, I'm really happy Gabe's back. I get to learn. I was like, also, I mean, it does kind of, and he's like, I want to learn from this guy. Like, this guy has done it. And yeah, to learn from a guy like Gabe Jacas, if you're Joe Barna, who, to be honest, like, there are similarities there. Gabe is probably in this different tier of just an impressive human being, right? Physically.
Joe
they play the game. He's
a lot like him.
they play the games very similarly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, they're both really good athletes, both, kind of these, not the longest guys, but incredibly strong, got good athletes. Yeah. They're just, the motor on both those guys is so insane. It's what I loved about Joe as a high school prospect is just, you knew he was going to give 100% to the end of whistle at every play. And that's what Gabe brings. So I think it's a phenomenal thing for him to learn from him. And it's good depth. If Gabe ever suffered an injury, he's been pretty healthy throughout his career. To have Joe Barna is very significant. And to have Alec Bryant, who I think can play the buck position as well, with Leon Lowry at the Fox, is big. This position's got a lot of depth. Daniel Brown being a part of that. I do want to mention, like, Daniel Brown played some linebacker his first spring that he was here. It's kind of a thing we've seen, some players kind of cross-training at these positions. So JoJo Hayden has moved back from outside linebacker to linebacker that we saw in the practice. I don't know if he's practicing outside linebacker all the time, or if he was before that. But Ish Kante has now moved from linebacker to outside linebacker. So these are just kind of the sub-package third down group of guys that I kind of put in a different group. The other thing I want to mention before we get away from the outside linebackers, this is a really interesting coaching situation, right? There's some pressure on Trent Harris and Alex Panos, young 20-something coaches, to do this job. The good thing is they were doing this job the last 4 games, all 4 wins for Illinois. But you got to get the most out of Gabe Jacas. And you have 2 seniors that are in this group with Alec Bryant and Leon Lowry on top of Gabe Jacas. This should be a very, very good group. This needs to be a strength of the team. So those 2, along with Joe Kim, it's like a 3-headed monster of a coaching for this group, which obviously is so important for what the defense does.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of dynamics in that are interesting too. And just, I know Trent Harris is the outside linebackers coach, but you also have voices that you've hired to be meaningful voices in that room, and Alex Panos and Joe Kim. So there's just a lot of voices, a lot of different input. Also, the head coach has some history coaching that position. I don't want to pretend like I think Brett Bielema is hanging out with the outside linebackers every practice, but if he's got some thoughts, we know Brett Bielema will share those thoughts on that position. So yeah, interesting. And you need, like, if you're Trent Harris, you're Alex Panos, Gabe Jacas, you're kind of really needing him to have a big year and be that guy, right? Be that destructive force. And if you get that out of him, it's an awesome recruiting pitch to continue to move forward, right? Like, now you've got an edge who's potentially a top 2 round draft pick, and you're selling the heck out of that everywhere that you can sell it.
And boy, they got a pretty good 2026 class of edge rushers, coming in. Jacob Alexander, in-state prospect. Jalen Stewart, they flipped from Oklahoma State, coming from Texas. Kingston Shaw out of Florida. Caden Bennett out of Connecticut. Really eclectic, deep group of talent they got coming in 2026.
They will probably be, let's be honest, if your sell is what you hope it is, you're probably selling in the portal, right? To get some more experienced guys, because you're losing 3 experienced seniors after the season.
Would it be too bold to say this is going to be? Yeah, probably too bold, because quarterback might be their biggest need. I'm high on Carson Boyd, but still, you got Luke Altmaier. You might want to see what you can get in the quarterback portal next year. But outside of quarterback, outside linebacker, biggest need in the portal coming up? I mean, you lose your top 3 guys.
Yeah, I think it unquestionably the biggest need defensively, because we like the depth at the other spots and the young depth. Wide receiver, same thing, right? Like if the talent produces like you think it's going to produce, you probably don't fret too much there. Offensive line could be in that conversation, particularly tackles.
That was going to be mine, but like, because it was 4 starters. But if you like what you see out of Desmond Schuster and he gets another year of eligibility, and you like what Henderson and Hansen do, and you like TJ McMillan, they got to add 2 guys in the offensive line. So that would be the other one, right? Like I still want, but like Tyler McMillan's interesting. There's just a way where it's like, okay, offensive line, maybe it could be a little bit better than we hope, but they're going to attack that one. DB, they probably got to attack, but man, there's a lot of young talent in there that seems like it's going to be ready, whether it's Resetich, Sabor Kareem, if Matthew Bailey moves on, you return good cornerbacks. Tanner Heckle's probably going to take that nickel spot from Xavier Scott. So DB, they probably won't have to be as aggressive.
No, offensive line. I just believe collect as many tackles. If you can play tackle in the Big Ten, collect as many as you can get and develop them, because it's a hard position, right? There's not a lot of tackles who are ready to go. So get them if you can get them, man, and go from there.
And center. We'll see who their center is next year. Losing a 3-year starter, that's an important position, especially if you're working in a new quarterback as well. All right, let's move to linebacker, Joey. This was a group that I don't want the late season surprise of being pretty good overlook that this group on the whole was a big weakness of this team. The first 8-9 weeks were not great, and that included Dylan Rosiek, who was having a good year, but the rest of the linebacker crew wasn't all that good. But man, when Rosiek went down, you had great play from Ryan Mead, who honestly struggled the first 2 months of the season, was a weak spot of that defense. He ended the season so well, and it was so cool to see a guy who cared so much about the school, a walk-on from Brooklyn, to do that and to get a chance at the NFL. But then all these guys in the sub packages, I give Archie McDaniel and Aaron Henry and this entire staff a huge credit for getting Malachi Hood in the game and making differences in wins. Getting James Kreutz to play his best ball after I thought he struggled early in the season. And then Kenena Odeluga played extremely well. You saw JoJo Hayden and Daniel Brown make an impact in those sub packages. So I thought the staff did a great job of putting these guys in positions to succeed, where they did play well late in the season, but they did not play well in the first 2 months.
No, we saw, teams kind of do the same thing that we saw in 2023, where you want to put those linebackers in conflict. You want, especially if you're a running back, you want to try to match up and exploit what's, a little bit of a lack of speed, or, where you can be taken advantage of from a speed standpoint. And that was kind of the story, right? That's why when Dylan Rosiek went down, it's like, oh man, what are they going to do? Because even though Dylan Rosiek was picked on a little bit, especially by running backs, he is a good football player. He's one of their 5 best defensive football players. That's why it was a big question. So they were able to get the most out of their total roster after Dylan Rosiek. That is a bright spot. I think that experience should help them going into this season. But if you're opposing offenses, do you try to continue to exploit that until you don't feel like it's exploitable anymore? And I would be curious if Duke or if Indiana tries to go in some of those check to your running backs or maybe some tight ends and see if you can pick on them a little bit.
Yeah, here's the numbers that were pretty ugly last year, mostly in pass coverage. The linebackers were targeted 75 times. They gave up 55 receptions for 525 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's 140.9 pass efficiency. That's like all Big Ten quarterback efficiency right there. So they also missed a lot of tackles. 2.5 missed tackles a game from your linebackers. The other highest for Illinois during the Bielema era was 1.8. So that was a concern. Like in the run game too, they were not making as many plays as they need to. I did think they rushed the passer pretty well, especially late in the season. Dylan Rosiek, we'll talk about him, made some key plays as a pass rusher. But just because they ended the season well, that was good. And you hope that momentum continues. But I just want to make the point that this group overall, Joey, does need to take a step forward because it's been a weakness on the team the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I think Dylan Rosiek over a full season will help, and we should probably get into it because I think some of the guys and some of the traits you saw elsewhere in that linebacker room, I think those guys are ways to take that step forward.
All right, let's go into it. What does Dylan Rosiek's return mean for this group, Joey?
It is a big return, right? I mean, you saw the plays he made, the walk-off sacks against Nebraska. Purdue was that was also a walk-off. Yeah, 2 walk-off sacks in 3 weeks, 3 games, I think it was. So he is a huge piece to this defense. That goes without saying. I do think in the run game, he's very, very sure, right? I'm very much a believer of him in the running game. We'll see, some of that pass pro. Is he a guy who, where's he fit in that third down package? That's what I am. If it's 3rd and 4, 5 plus, who's out there? Is it Rosiek? I do think there's a lot of trust in him. Or do you try to get someone who's got a little bit more speed, who can match up a little bit? That is a really, really interesting storyline to follow as the season goes on, or starts, really. But I don't want to overlook it, man. He's a team captain. He's a guy that they all believe in. He is a productive football player. He forces fumbles, Hansen-like, right? I mean, that was the comp coming out with him.
Yeah. Can I bring
good,
it,
man?
Because Dylan is not the biggest linebacker. He is not the fastest linebacker. So you kind of start to think about him as like this steady, reliable guy, right? That's kind of big, thick, and, stuffs the run. And he does some of those things. I don't think we should overlook him as a playmaker. I mean, think of the plays he makes. 6 forced fumbles over the last 2 years. He gets the ball out. I mean, I know we talk about interceptions all the time, but forced fumbles are just as good. Get the ball out and recover the dang thing. He's really good at that. And you talk about clutch plays. We can bring up Luke Altmaier. Dylan Rosiek with those 2 closing sacks. What happens if those don't happen? Against Nebraska, obviously, it was like 3rd and forever, but that Purdue sack was incredibly huge because it felt like Purdue was getting whatever they wanted to. And he found a way to chase after the quarterback and get him to the ground. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think 1st and 2nd down improve because you get Dylan Rosiek back, and just obviously so consistent, and he is reliable, but just getting that kind of playmaker in the run game, they did lack at times last year. And he's a team captain, man, for a reason.
Dude, in the last 21 games, he has 145 tackles, 10 TFLs, 2.5 sacks, and 6 forced fumbles.
Pretty good.
That's really, really good. Like, I'm with you. 1st and 2nd down, the run defense, I feel like, should get better this season. It has to get better this season. I do like what they've done up front, but I also like that they have that dude back at middle linebacker.
Yeah, I mean, the Jake Hansen comps are easy because they went to the same high school and they're kind of family friends. But they bring similar value, right? And I don't know if Rosiek's going to be, probably not going to be a starter in the NFL, but I do think, like Jake, he's going to have a chance to be a special teamer and find a chance and get a chance to make an NFL roster because of that. And he is the epitome of tough, smart, dependable. He's what you want. He's a big part of this culture and a big part of the middle of the defense. All right, but in the base package, which we don't see all the time, if teams are running, 3 wide receivers, Illinois is going to put their nickel package in there with 5 defensive backs, but they do play 2 linebackers in their base scheme. The weak side linebacker. Who is the favorite for that job, Joey?
We should run through the candidates probably before, just to put those out there. It's Kaneno Deluga. I think Malachi Hood should be in that conversation. JoJo Hayden. Those are your top 3 at that position.
Yeah, because James Kreutz is your backup Mike linebacker. That's what he is. And I think he's a really good backup Mike linebacker. And he's going to get snaps. He's going to come into the game. Unbelievable special teams player. Brings a lot of value there. And he's going to probably have his chance to start at that position next year. But right now, still your backup. He's not the guy at Weakside.
I think the answer is Kaneno Deluga. We've gone back. This has been actually like a sneaky starting battle, right? Like on a team that has so few, this has been a sneaky starting one. I think it's Odeluga. The way he came on, his pass rush win rate is absurd. It's absolutely, he gives you so much value as a pass rusher at that position. Archie McDaniel talk.
Just to give you the stats, 6 sacks the last 3 seasons. You don't think about that. Some of that's as a third down package. Like he'll line up in the B gap and rush the passer from there. But last year he had 6 pressures and 3 sacks, Joey, and just 35 pass rush snaps. Pretty good win rate.
That seems good. Now you have to expand more, right? If you're going to be that weak side linebacker, you cannot just be an additional pass rusher. And I think that's been an emphasis is getting him to expand his game more. Archie McDaniel talked about that earlier in training camp. But I would lean towards him, especially the way we saw him come on after that ankle injury in 2023. Clearly, they talked about it took him a little bit to get back to where he was. He physically is. He's not the longest guy. He's not the tallest guy. He is impressive. He is a physically impressive gentleman.
I forgot who called him it, but somebody called him an action figure when he was like a redshirt freshman or something.
Yeah, that checks out. So I don't know how confidently I lean in that direction, and I don't know if you would agree, but right now as it sits, I would expect it to be him, and then we will see what third down looks like.
Yeah, for me, I think we got to remember Kenenna Odeluga was this 2 years ago. He was the starting Weakside linebacker, right? Like, didn't they start the year with, was it Tariq? No, he was gone by then, right? Somebody else started.
22.
Yeah, somebody else started in 2023 at linebacker. And then Kenenna and Dylan kind of took over. Kenenna, was it CJ Hart? Kenenna took over that job? I can't remember.
I thought, didn't CJ Hart train? I'm looking it up now so we don't sound like we're just.
But like he took over the role is the point. And then he started and played pretty well. Like there were struggles at times, but then he suffered that injury. And last year it just took him time to get back to fully healthy. And that's why I always covered football long enough that when these guys suffer catastrophic injuries, like a fractured ankle, like Kenenna did, it takes some time not only to physically recover, but then mentally recover from that. But just physically, he wasn't quite the same player. Played special teams last year, but by the end of the year, he was fully back and it looked like Kenenna Odeluga again. So, I mean, Archie said during the spring, he's hitting the bleep out of people. And you could tell like he likes this kid. So he's not ideal length. He's under 6 foot, but he is strong. He's athletic. He's tough. He's really smart. So it would not surprise me because he's done this before. And this is probably a role that plays about 300 snaps. And they do like to do that overhang thing with these weak side linebackers where they do pass rush a little bit. And he's really good against the run. He was really stout against the run in 2023. So he makes sense as just a reliable veteran next to Dylan Rosiek. And those guys have played a lot of football next to each other.
Absolutely, it was Tariq Barnes, by the way. So, yeah, I don't want to lose sight that he's a guy who has been in this role before. I thought, really, going into last season, he was ready to take that jump. What we didn't know was it was going to take him longer to get back from that ankle than we maybe anticipated. But he's been there. He's done it. I think him getting healthy, the way he brings that run game, that element to the run game, I would lean towards him. But the other options, Jeremy, are very, very intriguing.
All right, so let's go to that. How is the biggest X factor? Who is the biggest X factor at this position?
If it makes you feel better, I did a radio hit today and I forgot Jeremiah Smith's name. I got Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams crossed over in my brain. And I was like, this is, and you're in like Atlanta where I'm like, oh, this is awful for me to forget. At any rate, how is the biggest X factor at this position?
Why is the biggest X factor, Joey?
What actually works?
Why are we here?
I'm somewhere between, and please, I'm just going to tell you who I'm between. I hope you can make me sound smarter than I am. I'm somewhere between Malachi Hood and JoJo Hayden.
That's what
that's where I'm at. That's what really the question is. I think Malachi Hood is a guy who could float between both in third downs. So what we're talking about is third down, right? Because you have here are all these guys we're talking about on first and second down. And what we saw at the end of last season is who are the guys on third down? And I think JoJo Hayden, I think Malachi Hood are those guys we're talking about as third down guys and guys who can make an impact there.
Yeah, because the middle linebacker and weak side linebacker are first and second downs. Things change on third downs. There's like 3 or 4 linebackers on the field sometimes on third downs because they take these outside linebackers or defensive linemen off and just get a bunch of fast athletic guys. What is Malachi Hood? A fast athletic guy. And I think you could see Rosiek come off on those downs, put Malachi Hood in the middle, spy a quarterback, just hover in the middle of the field because Malachi's good in coverage and he's probably better at that than Dylan would be. And then he can just close. If he's got to go chase down a quarterback and spy, we saw it last year. Jack Loft's a pretty good athlete, playing baseball again now. That's how bad Northwestern's quarterback situation was. But even guys like Lenore Sellers, right? You get those linebackers on the field, and it's harder for him to escape guys like that. Aiden Childs. So Malachi made some big plays doing that. So I think a lot of people would have liked us to say Malachi Hood is the favorite for weak side linebacker. And, my speculation was just to find a way to get him on the field more. Maybe that could be a spot. But just based on what we've seen, I don't know if that's going to be the role for him. And maybe the role is just, again, to be a sub-package special teams all-star for Illinois and give him good depth there. But he is really intriguing. But I got to tell you, JoJo Hayden intrigues the heck out of me too. He didn't have quite the sack production, but the pressure production for him was really good as a redshirt freshman. And he gives him more power, athleticism. And we talk about these sub-package guys, along with Odaluga and Daniel Brown. JoJo Hayden's just another one of these kind of tweeners on first and second down, but could be great in his role on third down. So, yeah, all these guys are going to play. Like, they're going to get on the field in some aspect, Joey. And that's what's fun about this group is the way the staff has found ways to get them all on the field in different ways and to kind of, mask some of their issues, whether it's Odaluga and Rosiek in coverage or, show their strengths like a JoJo Hayden and Daniel Brown and, Kenan Odaluga as pass rushers, and Malachi Hood is just roam in the middle of the field and spy the quarterback.
JoJo Hayden had 6 pressures last season. 3 came against Michigan State, which is now clear to me that it was just a collect your pressure day against Michigan State, right? I mean, that's absurd. Yeah, that's what, and we talked, I don't remember if we were recording or not recording, Jeremy, at the time, but if you think of a depth chart, someone who is buried in what is just a standard boilerplate depth chart, whether it's whatever outlet you get it from, you could look up and in a critical third down, it's like, oh, Malachi Hood, oh, JoJo Hayden, and they have the
so like
staff.
Go to the first depth chart that's going to pop up in your Google chart is as our lads, right? And they might have JoJo Hayden at outside linebacker and third string when on third down, he could be the starter in their third down sub package, right? And he's going to play 100 something snaps like he did last year. So those guys are going to find a way to get on the field. Just because they're listed at this or this doesn't mean they're not going to make an impact. So that's why I like the depth chart I was making. I had James Kreutz or Malachi Hood is the backup middle linebacker because I think both those guys are going to play. Kreutz is probably more the first down, second down backup, while Malachi Hood might be the starter in third downs.
Yeah, that's now if you're confused listening to this, ideally Illinois would like other coaching staffs to try to sort through what skill sets do what and where and how does Illinois deploy them. I think the big takeaway in terms of this, Jeremy, I think they liked what they got out of those sub packages last year. I think they're going to run those third down ones back, but do they put any other wrinkles? Is it just a third down or do you try to wrinkle in other spots? How does it all look? Is it matchup dependent? I think when we talk about depth, what you're seeing is skill sets are so unique from player X to player Y. I mean, you can unload some of your depth there by using them in different ways. And maybe you see a guy who, you come into it's like, oh, Malachi Hood played 25 snaps last game. And the next game it calls for him to play 12.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I think there's going to be fluctuation between some of your non-Rosiek and non-Odaluga guys in terms of snap counts, but there could be a lot of effectiveness if it's just 12 snaps, right?
Yeah, the whole point, and sorry to hammer this home, is like it's something we've tried to talk about throughout the years. Growing up, the Lovie Smith defense, even when he was here, like he played nickel packages and all that, but it was pretty clear, like, these are your starters. This is what's going to be on the field every drive, no matter what. They're going to sit in what they do and just kind of try to make plays. This defense that Ryan Walters, and Bielema, and Aaron Henry, and Terrence Jameson, all of them created, is very multiple. It changes. It's like an amoeba. It changes based on the down and distance. It changes based on the opponent you're going up against. And I love it. Now it's changed how aggressive they are. Like Walters was insanely aggressive because he had one of the best secondaries in Big Ten history. I would put it up there in 2022. So Aaron Henry's changed it a little bit because you got to sit in coverage a little bit more when you don't have, all those NFL guys in the back. But this year they might have more of that. But that's what I've loved is just how versatile they have been, how multiple they have been. And this position, as much as any, is affected by that.
Yeah, and I think you see that in the way they're recruiting, right? These sub packages aren't just 1 or 2 year roster build wonders. They're recruiting to continue to have Caden Bennett is so different from Jacob Alexander, right? If you think about the class of 2026. So they're recruiting to be able to mix and match and continue to do this as they go forward, which is, encouraging, I guess, if you would like to see more of that confusion and have more of these 50-minute discussion about sub packages.
Yeah, and Caden Bennett reminds me of like a JoJo Hayden. Then a guy like Caden Cobbs is probably more in like a nickel. He's kind of like a hybrid linebacker safety kind of guy, right? But we have him listed at linebacker. So these guys can kind of fluctuate throughout the field. Matthew Bailey's basically a linebacker in this defense, right? But he's kind of that boundary safety. So it's just fun to kind of mix and match what this looks like. And if you just don't know what we're talking about, just watch on the games, the personnel and how it changes. I do want to mention Grant Bierman. I know a lot of people should be excited about him. 4-star linebacker coming in. He's coming into a very veteran group, so I don't expect him to play a big role in this defense right away. He's a Mike linebacker. I think he's a guy that could compete next year for playing time there, along with Hood and Kreutz. He's an exciting guy, though, Joey. Really impressive to talk to. I've been talking to him since obviously he flipped, but talked to him the other day. He's just really loving learning from everybody and the toughness of everything that's going on. There's a story up at Illini Inquirer now if you want to read that. But boy, he's different. 6'5", he's at about 230 now, and really athletic, sideline to sideline. Maybe it's not this year, Joey. Maybe it's special teams a little bit, but he is an exciting future piece for this defense.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by him. He looks wholly different, just with his size. I can't, like, someone asked, like, what freshmen are going to play? And the answers are Trimble, pick a DB, probably between Tywan Cox, Denai Scott, and RJ Jones. And then I kept coming back to, like, is Bierman, like, is he a special teams guy? Is he going to be that guy that you see flying down there on probably punt, right, where you can really maximize him? Maybe. Like, that would be where I see him the most, or I would like to just unleash James Kreutz to go do that, right? Like that feels like a very Kreutzian role for him. But he's a 4-star kid. He's physically so intriguing. I just am curious if there's a role for him, and I think if there is, that answer is special teams.
Yeah, for sure. All right, any final thoughts on linebackers?
Yeah, nothing. It is fun to talk just because the weak side linebacker is so interesting, and because sub packages make this a very layered conversation, right? I just think there's a lot of guys you're going to see out there with a handful of snaps as the season goes on, and I think they're going to fluctuate week to week.
All right, we will get ready for our last one, DBs and special teams on this podcast. DBs, can we call it the best group on this team, Joey? Are we willing to say that?
Maybe. I think Luke Altmaier existing on this roster puts quarterback is kind of hard to take off of that list.
Maybe I'll make that argument. I'm going to make an argument.
Look, hey, here's the thing. I'm not going to hate the argument when you make that, and it's Thursday, so when you make that Monday, let's hope. It's a fine argument to make, and one, when I was on today, I don't remember who it was. I said, hey, if you're not, it's a tease, right? I think that's what we called in here. If you're not talking enough about Matthew Bailey nationally, please start.
Yeah.
Because I think that is a conversation that's going to get very loud by the middle of October.
He's awesome. Had an awesome close to the season. But we appreciate you guys listening to this one. We'll wrap up the position preview. I guess it's going to be on Monday and not on Friday. That's what Joey Wagner just decided. So we
can do it on Friday if you insist. We probably should.
It'd just be a nice wrap up for a week rather than going to another week. But we'll talk about it.
Okay. If you insist, that means we got to do sign guys on like Monday or Tuesday.
Sure. Yeah. That's the other reason I want to move on to the Sign Guys podcast. I'm getting Ridiculous.
All right, we'll do it. We'll do it tomorrow. So a tease for tomorrow. Talk more about Matthew Bailey, please.
Yes, we'll talk about defensive backs and special teams. But hopefully you appreciated this one. If you don't already follow us, rate us, review us wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell as well. For Joey Wagner, I'm Jeremy Werner. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.